Hi, so this episode is all about the initial signs of cognitive decline. So, the things to look out for at the very beginning to maybe make you a bit concerned, and then moving forward to the things that, can happen afterwards. So I hope you enjoy this video. I just wanted to introduce it in one of my favourite forests, little wood just on York Knavesmire, the racecourse. So I hope you enjoy this video. So one of the first things has got to be forgetfulness. Obviously, it's one of the most common things that everybody associates with dementia. We all forget things now and again. However, it's just knowing what level of forgetfulness is concerning and what isn't. So, repeating things a lot is part of it, because people forget that they've already told you something, so they'll tell you again and possibly again and again. Now, I know I do that now and again with my own children and my husband, and I get told, you've already told us that. But, now and again, I'm a busy person, that happens. Sometimes I walk from upstairs to downstairs, as I'm sure you all do, and I've forgotten what I've gone down for. But it's now and again, it's not all the time, and there's no other signs of a decline or any other signs of dementia. So part of the thing is recognizing what's normal and what's maybe not, what's something to be concerned about. So repeating things, forgetting people's names, even people that the person has known quite well, and all of a sudden forgetting the name, and then maybe coming up with other names, or what my mum used to do was she would possibly forget somebody's name, but she would say, oh, that girl, or your husband. So she would forget my husband Kevin's name, but she would just refer to him as my husband, which is really out of character, something that she would never do. She loves Kev, and she would always use his name before, and she did various things like that. Also, I would phone her up most days, and I would just normally have a conversation about what she'd done that day. It got to the point where she just couldn't remember what she'd done, so she would possibly make something up, and I would get a feeling that she was making it up, but not really realised at first. But then eventually I realised I've just got to go along with this. So that's all under the heading of forgetfulness. Also, finding the right words. Mum did start doing this, and it is a common trait. The word will just disappear. So you're trying to say something and a word just isn't there. Now that, again, something that maybe we all do now and again, but my mum did start doing that quite regularly. So she would struggle to find the word, and the natural thing for somebody to do is to almost help them and tell them what that word is. Now, different people have different opinions about that. I found that with mum, it helped her to allow the conversation to keep flowing. Other people say, no, don't put words into their mouths. It's one of those things, you just do what you feel is right for that person, and just try and do your best. It does make conversations slightly more difficult, but just treat them as a person, be kind, and just allow them a bit more time to tell a story or explain something. You might find that they start being a bit quieter when there's a group conversation going on, and they might just leave everybody else to it, and that's partly because they can't keep up with the conversation and they just feel embarrassed, so they just sit quieter than normal maybe. And this is all because thinking speed is affected. Dementia does affect the brain, and the thinking speed is just not as good as it used to be. So empathy, this is a really weird one when I discovered this. A lot of sufferers do lose the ability to empathise with other people. So they will lose that compassion that possibly they had before, lose that understanding and the appreciation of other people's feelings. So it might be seen by, it might be seen by the carers or their friends or family as being something that's, maybe they're deliberately being unsympathetic. They're not. It's not their fault. It is just something very, very difficult for carers to cope with. When you hear somebody who was previously very compassionate and very caring, when you hear them just not take an interest in somebody else's problem, it's a weird one, really. But that there are changes that happen to their brain, and it's not their fault, but it's a really hard thing to remember. But as a carer, you just have to try and remember, there are studies that have been done, there's lots of things that have been looked into, and it is definitely a part of the brain that just doesn't function anymore. So please try and be kind. It's really hard sometimes, but you have to just try and go with it. So just some examples for you. So it could be that, somebody is told a good piece of news by a family member. So it might be that their daughter's got engaged or their granddaughter's got engaged or something. And normally that person will be over the moon and really excited about that thing. But they might just not show any emotion at all. So they might just brush it off, possibly not even comment, and move the conversation on. There are examples, I'm not going to go into detail, but there are examples where we had that with our mum, and she would quite quickly turn the conversation back to something that she was doing. I suspect that's because she felt more comfortable with the conversation when it was something about her. She could follow it because it was about her, whereas if the conversation was about anybody else, then she couldn't follow it, she didn't really know what to say. Another example is, possibly if somebody is ill, somebody close to them is ill, they may treat it as an inconvenience. How inconvenient that person is ill, that's going to stop me doing what I want to do or what I had planned to do. So we're possibly back to that routine thing. But they might just display a lack of understanding and concern about somebody who is ill. So that's a really hard one. A really hard one indeed, because again, it's just probably not that person's personality. Their natural personality would be to be very caring, look after somebody, show concern. So it's a subject that I actually found really hard, and I'm sure a lot of families do, and friends. Hearing, I might do an episode on hearing with dementia. I have a friend who's an audiologist, and she may well help me with that. But just to quickly mention that hearing can be affected, partly because of possibly the age of the person. But yeah, with my mum, we did find that her hearing was going, and at the very beginning, I tried to broach the subject. She wouldn't admit that her hearing was going. Mood's another thing. So yeah, dementia does affect the mood a lot. It can make somebody become more withdrawn. It can make them more upset than they normally are, maybe upset about smaller things that they wouldn't normally let affect them. It affects their judgment, so in all sorts of ways. For instance, one of the examples is it might make them say more inappropriate things. So for instance, somebody could absolutely have been the loveliest person who would never say a bad word about anybody, and then all of a sudden they say something awful about somebody, or they might suddenly become racist when they've never been racist before, or whatever. So we have experienced that with mum. It's a difficult one because sometimes it's funny, but not. We did experience, mum would suddenly tell one of us that we were fat, where she would have never dreamt of saying anything like that before. Or she might literally come out and just say, no, that's awful, what have you done with your hair? Or she might pass somebody in the street and literally say out loud, oh, they're a bit fat, or oh, what are they wearing? So just little things like that just totally out of character. Apathy, so losing interest in hobbies, activities, so things that they might have previously really enjoyed doing, they may lose interest in that, and that could be for a number of reasons. It might be because they feel they can't do that thing anymore. Mum used to love doing knitting, crocheting, crafts, doing cross stitch, and she wasn't doing any of that anymore. So I tried to get her back into it just for something to do, really. So I really tried to get her doing crocheting again, and she just couldn't do it. I really tried to help her, and I just had to give up in the end because she just couldn't function and couldn't do that anymore. Difficulty with normal tasks, so practical things like she used to be able to use a laptop and do email, so she would email with some of her friends and with us. She just couldn't use a laptop anymore at one point, and then gradually after that we started losing different things. So for instance, she would struggle to use the TV remote, the phone, lots of different pieces of equipment. She gradually just, it became harder to start with, and then eventually just couldn't use them. She also used to be a big Sudoku and crossword player, so she would always be doing a crossword or something like that, and she stopped doing that, and I think that it's pretty obvious why. She just obviously felt she couldn't do it anymore, so she didn't want to try. She couldn't follow games, so if we were maybe at Christmas and all the family were playing a game, she couldn't follow the rules of that game, so she just sat out. So that was quite sad, really, because she used to love doing things like that before. She also lost the ability to watch TV, so series, for instance, she would love watching things like Downton Abbey or a series on TV, and she just stopped doing that because she couldn't follow the storyline. Reading books as well, she was always a big reader. She would always have a book on the go, and she just stopped reading books. She could manage magazines and things like that where there was more pictures and maybe just a short piece of text, but definitely not where you have to follow a storyline. Repetition and routine. So routine is massively important, even in the really early stages. You might notice that routine becomes more important to somebody, so they get a bit upset if their routine is not followed. So if you were dropping in on somebody and they were meant to have their coffee at 11 o'clock, and you dropped in and stopped them having that coffee or doing whatever they were going to do at that time, then it might well cause them to be upset or just not quite right about it. You also might find that they start collecting items, so collecting things maybe obsessively. Mum did this as well. She would collect leaflets and all sorts of things that we just couldn't understand why she needed these things, why she felt the need to keep these items in the house, and it was just starting to clutter up the house. But again, once we knew more about it, we realised that it was part of the dementia. Mum would write things down more, but also, if I wrote things down for her, she wouldn't be able to follow a set of instructions. So, it got to the point where I would write a list, instructions on how to use the TV remote, and she couldn't follow the instructions. That took me a while to realise why she couldn't do something. It's because she just couldn't follow it on the paper. We got to the point where a lot of these things that I've explained were starting to happen, and also we had family and friends were starting to notice things, and a couple of mum's friends would come to us and just mention it, and maybe I suppose checking out that we were on the case, and we realised that something was wrong as well. Okay, so that's it for this episode. I just wanted to say that the next one is to do with power of attorney, because at this stage, when you first start noticing things, it's absolutely crucial that you try to get a power of attorney for both health and for finances, and have hopefully at least two people that are that lasting power of attorney, and also getting a will made or updating a will before that person loses capacity. It's really important to do it as early as you possibly can. So the next episode will be to do with that, and then we'll be moving on towards looking at how you can work towards a diagnosis. So I hope this has been useful for some people. Please keep following, and I'll say bye-bye for now.